Okay, good morning, everyone. We are delighted to have all of you here today. Adhyayan is an integrated knowledge sharing platform. Learning is a lifelong process. One should never stop learning and keep on upgrading skills every day. Hence, it is our endeavor to bring to you expert speakers who have the experience and in-depth knowledge of their subjects. Hence, we organize workshops, sessions, and classes on a wide range of topics ranging from health, education, parenting, self grooming, career counseling, and many more. For our animal welfare sessions, we are pleased to be associated with Pathon Run for a Cause. This is a group of young, passionate animal welfare volunteers. Today we have Anushri Chaudhary from Pathon who will tell us more about their work. Anushri?
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Hi, good morning, everyone. So this is Anushri from Pathon team, and we are very happy that, this set of series is there with Edhyan, and this is very informative for everyone. So even today's session is going to be a very informative session on what all points to mention and consider before adopting. So just a very brief introduction on Pathon. So Pathon is basically a non-profitable fund which is run by four like-minded people, and we do sterilization of stray dogs for all over Pune. So many people and volunteers have got their dogs sterilized by taking slots from us. So we have sterilized around 800 plus dogs as of now, and we do indie adoptions as well. So you can go to our Instagram or Facebook page, and you can see that we share details of our indie adoptions daily. So after today's session, if you feel like if you want to adopt a dog or an indie, you can check our Insta page. So thank you and have a great session today. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you, Anushri. Okay, so before we start the session, I would like to share some ground rules. Please place yourself on mute. After the speaker is done talking, we will give a chance to everyone to ask their questions and queries. Okay, so today's session is about making an informed decision while getting a dog home. It's not an easy decision, but we have the honor and pleasure of having as guest speaker today, Shalaka Mundada, who is extremely experienced and has great knowledge in this field. Shalaka Mundada is the owner of Pet Sitters, which is a premium pet boarding facility in Pune, India. Pet Sitters was founded in 2008. Shalaka is certified trainer and behaviorist from UK. She has also completed her kennel management course from Shirin Merchant, Canine Care, Mumbai. Along with kenneling, Shalaka largely works in the field of human-animal interactions. Some of the workshops that she conducts are pre-pet counseling, pet sibling programs, puppy handling workshops, pet handling workshops, and the dog school. We are also pleased to be associated with Shalaka's. Sachin, can you please share the screen slide?
Monica is trying to do that.
Okay, we are associated along with Pathon Run for a Cause. We are also associated with Pet Sitters, People for Animals, Pune Canine Kitchen, Animal Rescue Trust, and Crazy Paws Pet Resort. So over to you, Shalaka. I'm sure people are eager to know from you.
Thank you so much, Monica. It is lovely having you, so many people actually around over here. And just another forum which gives us the opportunity to, like you said, make an informed decision. We're largely going to be covering the do's and don'ts. We're largely going to be covering what is it that you need to think about when you're making a decision to get in a pet. I'll be more or less speaking about dogs at this point in time because that's the field that I work in. But we'll also be covering issues in terms of what does it mean to adopt, what does it mean to buy, what does it mean to pick up whether it's a pedigree or an indie. That kind of is immaterial because at the end of the day, what we are looking at is making a lifelong decision and a commitment to a pet. which largely goes to about 15 years is what we are looking at. So we're trying to cover stuff that which is going to help you think about it, understand it better, and if at all there is anything that you need, there's also always Anushri, there's me. You can check with, call up later to kind of get to know what breed or what dog is a perfect fit for your family. Over to you, Monica.
Yes, Sharada, you can start your.
Okay, so what we are largely looking at is one. I mean, to be honest, I mean, what's happened in this lockdown is, I think a lot of people have had the time to think. I think a lot of people have a lot of time on hand. I mean, apart from your work from home and of course the house chores, I think, which all of us kind of got busy with in the first 2 to 3 months, and with a certain level of uncertainty. What's basically happening is a lot of people have actually given a couple of decisions that they've taken, a couple of decisions that have been pending. They've been giving it a thought, and a pet is one of them that we are largely looking at. I mean, in this last month and a half, since the time we've been through a couple of unlock periods also in between the lockdowns. I think what are most common, what the most common answer or the most common question that I'm getting is, we want a pet, and how is it that we actually go about it? Now, when we say that we are getting a pet, like we say, we are largely looking at you to make a very large informed decision. It is a commitment that we are looking for you to make for the next 15 years of your life. That is in case you pick up a puppy. In case of an older dog, depending upon what age is it that you're picking up the pet, to be able to go ahead with it. Now, we are going to primarily look into a couple of things in terms of what is it that we need to actually consider when we say that we are getting a dog home. My first and foremost point in this entire thing would be, what are your schedules, you as a family? I mean, today kids are largely going to be working, children are largely going to be schooling from home. We are looking at least another 3 to 4 months of schooling from home. A lot of companies, wherever there is an option, there is a work from home option, because people are also trying to avoid getting a crowd into office. And it's also, I mean, if it's doable, why not, is the way to go at this point in time. If I can work from home, and if my work doesn't really stop anywhere or gets hampered anywhere, then why not? Which basically then again leaves us to a decision in terms of what is the kind of time that you have at hand. Secondly, what is the kind of compromise that you're willing to make with the existing time in hand? Like, what is it that you're willing to give up? Are you willing to give up that 15 minutes of sleep time in the morning? Are you willing to give up a little bit of TV time, a little bit of screen time away because your dog needs to be taken in on a walk? At what age is the pup coming in? Depending upon that, what are the kind of exercise requirements that your pet is going to have? What are the kind of medical needs that your pet is going to have in the initial stages, a veterinary intervention, or in the growing up stages, and as against that in the senior stages, which we are talking about 8 years or 9 years plus? What is it that I need to look at in terms of what is a good fit? How old are my children? If there are children in the family, whether I stay with my parents or not. So if there is a senior citizen in the family, and what are the kind of dependency that I have for them? Now, based on all of this, what we are largely looking at is then what is it that perfectly basically fits into my family? We are going to basically go one by one, and then I'm going to try and see if I can cover largely across age groups from a pet's point of view. The first one being, what is the kind of time on hand? Now, a dog actually is one of the only pets that we have managed to domesticate, and we've also very cleverly managed to make him completely dependent on us. Like, cats are not that dependent. You don't need to take cats out for a walk. But a dog, yes, you do need to take him for a walk. You do need to bathe him. You do need to make sure. I mean, that's one of the main differences between a cat and a dog. But for a dog, when we say there is exercise, so what is the kind of breed that I'm looking at, and therefore what kind of exercise does my dog need? Is it going to be sufficient if I do it for 10 minutes in a day, or is it something that that's going to require me to spend about an hour or two in a day, depending upon the breed size that we are looking at? The second one that we're looking at largely is, like we said, what are the kind of, I'm just going to run, just give me a minute. I'm just going to put the questions that Monica's put across to me in front of me so that it'll also be easier and I won't basically go off topic because I do tend to talk a lot sometimes on something. Yeah. So we're then going to cover is, like we said, we're looking at time, we're looking at medical, we're looking at exercise, we're looking at grooming. Now let's start from the dog's perspective. Here we are as a family who've decided that we're going to get in a pet. We've decided that we're going to get a particular breed, or we're going to adopt an indie, whichever way it might go. I think whichever way, I think it's as long as it's a thought about decision. Now when you look at a puppy, if you look at a 24-hour day, and if we cut out about 6 hours of sleeping time largely, we have about 18 hours left. Now, when we are talking about a puppy, these 18 hours largely get divided into 4 sections, 4 to 5 sections. Every section is about 4 to 5 hours, and the same section gets repeated. So the same routine gets repeated. So which means I'm going to be required to be available for the puppy every 4 hours for something or the other. And it's not an option for me to leave him alone at home from morning to evening, or even if I'm working, it's not possible for me to actually get the pup to do something or expect himself to keep himself busy, just the way we don't do it with infants and younger children. We are expecting a lot more time, a lot more interaction, because there's a lot that the dog actually learns at that point in time. So there's training involved, there's potty training involved, which means that where is it that I want my dog to pee or poop. So which means there's a routine involved, and there's a lot more breaks in terms of food. So when we look at the 18 hours divided into 4 or 5 sections, we are looking at the pup getting up from sleep. Immediately in about 10 to 15 minutes, the minute they get up, they're looking at going and having a quick pee, post which they're going to play around a little bit, post which they're going to be hungry, which means there's meal time. Once meal times are done, then there's going to be a little more play, because there's a lot more energy at this point in time, which means I have to be involved during that play as well, because I don't want this puppy to destruct anything around in the house, or I don't want him to eat up something while I'm not looking around in the house, because that just adds up to the veterinary visit. Once the dog is eaten, he plays around a little bit. Now puppies' metabolisms are very high, which means they're also going to poop right after that. So which means I have to be around, because I need to take the dog to the designated area in my house, or down or a lawn or a terrace, whichever place you guys are, whichever place as a family you decide that you want to get your dog to pee and poop. You're going to have to take the dog over there, get the dog to poop, clean up the area, get him again. And now the next 1.5 hours is when actually the pup is in a full force, which means that I've eaten, I've peed, I've pooped, and now all I want to do is basically play. Hour and a half of play, the dog is tired, he sleeps again, and then he wakes up, and then he pretty much repeats the same routine, which basically as a family or as a primary caregiver, it gives me about a 2-hour window, or about an hour and a half window somewhere in the middle, to be able to get my things done. And then again, I'm back onto the puppy routine. So this is a very important step that we are looking at in the early stages of the dog's life. When the play and everything is happening, or in the waking hours that we are largely looking at, we are looking also at the fact that I also need to train this dog. Now it seems very nice. I mean, all pups are cute. All pups are cute, but what happens is they grow up to be bigger dogs. The middle-sized ones, the labs, the golden retrievers, the German shepherds. If you have the large-sized dogs, which is your Rottweilers, Dobermans, Great Danes, Indies largely come between medium-sized dogs is what we are largely looking at. They don't really grow up to be very large dogs. And when we say in terms of small, medium, large, extra large, we're largely looking at the size of the dog. We're also looking at the weight of the dog. Now, all these puppies, when you're looking at them, it's very cute and it's beautiful and it's lovely when these pups are jumping up on you. They come, they want to bite you, they want to play with you. They pick up something and they run away and they don't want to give it back to you. Now, these are ways that the dog actually engages with you at any given point in time, because he's now looking for attention, because he thinks you are busy beyond earth. So what happens then is there's also a training session involved in this entire play zone in terms of what is it that I want my dog to do, how is it that I want my dog to grow up, and what are the couple of negotiable or non-negotiable items. Non-negotiable primary, not negotiable comes in secondary. What are the kind of items we are largely looking at is I want this dog to grow up to be so and so. I want him to be calm and quiet around older people because I live with my parents who are senior citizens. I want my dog to be able to drop an object if he picks something up because I have infants and I have children in the house who are basically I mean, things need not necessarily be in this kind of space where you expect as parents, you want the children to keep them. But yeah, they are going to be lying around. Socks are lying around, shoes are lying around, pencil sets are lying around, erasers are lying around, and you definitely don't want this dog to be picking up things wherever they've been kept off. So then what happens is, as a part, before even we are looking at getting a pet, as a family, we actually want you to sit together, figure out where is it that I want to be with this. Now, depending upon who's going to walk the dog, which means that I want this dog to walk properly on leash, then what is a good time for me to actually start getting this dog to walk properly on leash? Is it okay for, as we mentioned, at a 6 kgs, 7 kgs, 10 kgs, 12 kgs, till the time the dog is a puppy, it all seems fine. It all seems great because it's not so much of a task. What happens is when this dog actually becomes the 25, 28, 30, 35 kg dog is what we are looking at. And when that happens, then that becomes a chore. And then suddenly there is not a single person in the family who's saying that nobody volunteers to take the dog out for a walk, or nobody volunteers to say that, okay, fine, I'm willing to take my dog out for to a coffee shop because my dog barks a lot. Now, these are the kind of things that we are looking at, which necessarily do need to get instilled right at the time of what we call training, right at the time what we call formative years. The best part about dogs is you pretty much have a 6-month window largely. Assuming that you're going to be picking up the dog at 2 months of age, which is the ideal time for the dog to separate him from the mother, unless of course you're looking at picking up an indie who's being fostered at somebody's place, or there is an indie who's kind of maybe roaming around your house and you decide to adopt him, in which case any time is a good time, because then it's largely you who's going to get him to grow up, and you're going to be largely the mother and the father for the dog, even in the earlier stages. So when we're looking at that, now once the family sat down to decide the rules, once the breed has been decided, once the type of dog has been decided, these are the couple of things we want you to consider even before you set out on a venture, saying, what is it, where is it that I'm going to go looking? With children, what are the kind of activities they can do? If it's a small breed, can my child do the grooming activity? If it's a large breed, can my child do a grooming activity? How old is the child to be able to do that? Now, once all of that is established, that's where we basically work into something called a pre-pet consult, where we actually line up activities in terms of you as a family need to sit together and decide who's going to be largely responsible for what. Now, it does sound very easy at this point in time, and families who have children and who are looking at it at this point in time, I'm sure are thinking that the children promise a lot, saying that I will do this, I will do that, I'm going to I'm going to walk the dog, but what happens eventually is it does come on the mother of the house, is something that the lady of the house basically is what it largely comes on. So for us, it's also very necessary that she is completely and wholly into the decision making of getting a dog home, and irrespective of the fact that whether you're a working woman or no, I think it still comes onto the mother of the house, because I think it just primary caregiving is something that comes very naturally. So which is why that's how it kind of initiates. So which is why then training is something that we put in a lot of focus on. And as we were saying before, you have about 6 months, yeah, assuming you're getting the pup home at 2 months, you have another 4 to 4.5 months to basically instill the right kind of upbringing that you want your dog to be at. And believe you me, it's much more easier than children training, because within those 4 months, whatever you teach, this dog has learned for life, yeah, and including a bad habit. So if it's a bad habit that's learned, that's also for life. a good habit is definitely for life. And when we look at changing this particular bad habit, what happens is bad habits are primarily, like we said, pulling on leash, jumping up on people, barking their head off when somebody comes home. Now, these are the habits which tend to get, they're negative traits that we are looking at. So what we then, I mean, it's not that it's not impossible, it just takes a little more time, because it means that I'm going to first get the dog down from a negative to a 0, which takes the longest time, and then a 0 to positive is something that happens very quickly. So which is why those first 4 months, 5 months is something that's very critical. We want the family to put in the full time energy into it, which is why also I think largely this is the period that a lot of families are looking at getting pets, because there is a lot of time spent at home. So that's how we are basically looking at it. Now, going to a couple of other topics in terms of what are the kind of exercise that is required, what is the kind of food that's required. Now, we largely go by the fact that, I mean, of course, there's lots available in the market today. Let me first look at food. There's lots available in the market today. There's lots of options available, even from a home cooked food, I mean, like wet food point of view, as well as dry dog food point of view. My personal take on it is make sure that your dog gets used to everything. It's in terms of wet food, which is home cooked food, or even if it means you're getting delivery dabbas, ready food delivered at your place, because if there's a restriction of not being able to make, say, non-veg at home, and you do wish to give your dog non-veg as a part of his meals, you do have options where you can actually get in dog dabbas delivered at your place. I think we are going to be covering Anisha's session also sometime soon, where he'll be talking about that. And then, of course, there's store-bought food, which is also easier. So I personally go with a combination of both, because I want my dogs to get used to both. I want my dogs to get used to both. Why? Because there are going to be days when I'm probably in a hurry. I don't have the time to actually get up, cook, feed them, and then move out further. So in which case, dog food becomes the easiest and the quickest way for me to actually feed. If it means I'm traveling with my pet, we have a lot of options now where you can travel with your pets to holiday destinations. You can fly with your pets, drive down, a lot of homestays which do allow dogs. In which case, then carrying the dog food while you're traveling also becomes easier as against carrying a wet food dabba, because it's just something that's far more convenient, far more easy. Other than that, when we're looking at in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed, there's an entire food list that's available in terms of what fruits are allowed, what vegetables are allowed, and what proportions can you give them. Dog food, like we mentioned, they come across various flavors, right from chicken, turkey, I mean, a lot of poultry, fish, meat, all of that come in, and that decision is largely going to be based upon what breed you get, what is the size of your dog, as an older dog, in terms of whether he's a small sized dog, medium sized dog, or a large sized dog, and what is it that's going to be convenient to me. So these are the three aspects that you always need to consider. Price range wise, also you get a variety of food options, even in a price range. It could go to anywhere about 100 rupees a day is what you could be spending on food, to about 150 to 180 rupees a day also. So it really depends upon what is it that your dog needs as a point of a nutrition, what breed your dog is, and what nutrition does he need. If there's a medical condition, you might need to consult a vet or a canine nutritionist to be able to figure out what would be the best mix for your dog. Along with the food, the other thing that also sometimes comes up with is food allergies. So that's also something. So sometimes one food might suit your dog, one food might not suit your dog. So you need to then figure out how is it that you're going to understand the label of the food that you're picking up, to be able to figure out that if there is anything that's going wrong in the food that I'm giving. Because most often than not, allergies, just the way in humans, do largely go on a elimination point. Like you eliminate a certain part of the diet to be able to figure out if the dog is doing well, and then you move on. So if the minute you eliminate, say, item 1, and your dog's skin starts getting better, or the allergies start getting better, you can very safely, along with your vet's opinion, say that this could probably be one of the reasons why my dog wasn't doing well, which means you do need to change the food. The second one that we are going to look at largely is the exercise. Now, we've very recently done 2 blogs on exercise. The lockdown, these last 3 months, where a lot of issues did come up with whether I'm allowed to walk my dog in the society, whether I'm okay to walk my dog in the terrace, or a lot of societies had their own rules coming up, though very largely we were saying that no, it's necessary that you take your dog down for a little basic walk. Don't allow anybody to touch, because you're definitely avoiding any kind of touch, especially looking now at the corona situation. But from an exercise point of view, again, we are looking at it very breed specific. There are, again, lots of options available. From a physical exercise point of view, the one that we've been doing all the way long is basically taking your dogs for walks, doing fetch rounds, which is basically throwing an item and the dog getting it back to you, which involves free running. If you have a space in your society, or the area that you live in, if it's a small enclosure kind of a thing, you can actually leave this dog uh, completely open, let him go do his own thing. There's a lot of exercise, there's a lot of mental stimulation which also tires them out purely by sniffing ground. Like we say, there's a joke that moves around saying, like, the ground is basically a newspaper for the dog. Like, there's a lot of information that the dog actually garners when he goes out for a walk, from who walked before me over here, was it a male dog or a female dog, who peed here, who spooked here, did anybody actually stop, do I know this dog from any previous experiences. And that's the kind of information they're actually taking in while they're going out for a walk. Currently, with the wet soil, there's a lot of smell that comes out from wet soil, which is also extremely invigorating for a dog at any given point. So when we look at physical exercise, again, we are largely looking now. Here, I'm going to largely be talking about fit, healthy dogs. We're not really looking at dogs who come with a certain medical issue, joint-related problems, because that's a completely different topic. I will be able to take it up individually if need be, but I'm covering the larger population. Now, when we look at physical exercise, like we said, we're looking at leash walking, we're looking at free runs, we are looking at Pune is blessed to have a lot of hills around us. Most of these hills do allow dogs if you're on leash, so which means that's a good enough exercise to do alongside you. Swimming is one option. There are a lot of pools that are opened up now, specifically for dogs, where you can actually take your dogs for a swim. That's another whole body exercise, involves a very different set of muscles, involves a very different set of exercise routine when we are largely talking. It's just that for the swimming pool, we do have a restriction that we can only start swimming for a puppy after he's about 4.5 months of age and after all the vaccinations are done. So that's something that we need to take care when we are looking at a puppy. But till the time the dog is a senior dog, and if it means he enjoys swimming, water is always going to be your best friend. Only in case of, again, we are looking at any kind of skin infections or recurrent ear infections is when we would say that take a veterinary advice before taking your dog in for a swim, because you don't want the water to eventually aggravate the problem, because water does tend to enter the dog's ears while he's swimming, depending upon whether he has standing ears or flop ears. So that's something that you're going to have to check with your vet before taking a call on the swimming activity as such. Now, those are the physical exercises. Physical exercises also involve a lot of running around with me as a pet parent. I can actually rough and tough with a couple of dogs. If my dogs like being a little bit of rough play, I can. I mean, I sometimes end up wrestling with my dog per se. Like, where it's just a fun element for about 5 minutes. It's like a very high energy, whatever the high intensity training exercises that we call for humans. It's like 5 minutes of a lot of action, and then suddenly everybody stops and he's like, okay, and he actually he doesn't get it. He's like, something's wrong with her, and therefore I think I need to respond to her. So I get excited, he gets excited, and then it's like, for 10 minutes it's like a energy drive rush, like a sugar rush, and then everybody settles down. He's also tired, I'm also actually sufficiently tired. So it kind of it's also fabulous bonding exercise, because your dog then actually, there's a lot of touch involved. There's a lot of, like I said, the dogs do pick up on your energy. So if I'm kind of upbeat about certain things, my dog eventually will get upbeat alongside me about the same thing. He doesn't really understand what is it because of, but he's just generally excited because I'm excited. So there's like, there's like a lot of jumping. I want to do this, I want to do that. But then you do also need to stop it at a timely moment where it doesn't really end up hurting anybody. Now, this kind of exercise with younger children is something that we usually say no to, because somebody actually can get hurt in the process. Now, and then either the child ends up crying or the dog, and then the dog really doesn't understand because he gets reprimanded for doing something which he was invited to do sometimes. So playing hide and seek in the house is something that you can do. This is something that we've been telling a lot of pet parents throughout the lockdown period, because sometimes you just need to be able to stimulate the dog. And if I am somebody that my dog really likes, I think I want him to look for me, if I'm calling him out from some hidden place, and I want him to come and look for me, and instead of just ignoring and not figuring out what to do. So playing hide and seek is something that you can do in the house, which is again involved with you. Coming monsoons, if your dog has no joint related problems, you can actually look at using the stairs instead of the elevators, because it's a good exercise. Again, it's something that physically tires the dog out. Going down is something that we need to be very careful. Going down the steps is something that we need to be careful of. But coming up is something that's totally okay. So if your dog does do a walk slowly command along with you, then yes, you can actually involve that as well. It's not necessary that you have to use the elevator every time at this point, as a part of the exercise. So much so that from a desensitization point of view, we actually do tell new pet parents to walk their dog up the steps, because now with the high rises coming in and only the elevators being used, a lot of dogs actually don't know what it means to climb up. It's a completely new experience for them. They have no idea what it means to climb up for a flight of stairs, because they've never probably done it in their lives, because they've always used the elevator. So that's something that you can get the dog used to. Then moving to something which is a completely unknown, or rather a relatively new concept, is what we're talking is mind games, literally, where you're actually trying to get the dog to put his brain to use, to be able to figure out a problem. It could be something as small as hiding treats. If your dog is completely food driven, you can hide treats in the house and get your dog to find it. What the dog is now doing is, every time he finds this particular treat or toy or whatever he's looking for, it's self-rewarding. I don't even actually, yes, I am saying good boy at some point in time, but it just pushes him to go and find more stuff. So it largely works on a command. So you can actually work on, the smallest of things that we say without any equipment is, take 3 katoris, put food under 2, and just do those mix and match games, and tell your dog to basically find out. Now here again, he's going to use his nose. As you do know that the dog's noses are much 1,000 times better sense of smell than what humans do. So it basically then becomes, like we said, it's a problem solving activity, and largely it also becomes the fact that he's now trying to put his brain to use to be able to find out what is there. So now there are tons and tons of board games, actual board games that are available for dogs that you can look up in the market. The other couple of things is, you can just stick in one of the things that we typically do in summers is take a katori, fill water in it, put some dog kibble or any favorite treat that your dog really likes in it, and freeze it, and then give it to your dog to lick on it about 5 hours later, once it's completely frozen. Now this dog, again, is getting the smell of the cheese or the kibble or the paneer or the chicken piece that you've kept inside, but there's water all over, and he's going to then try and find out how is it that he can quickly get in. So it basically keeps him occupied for a relatively longer period. So right now, while I'm on a Zoom call for an hour, and because I don't want my dogs to kind of keep coming in and out of the camera, they've actually been given a katori of ice to lick on one side, because I know that's going to keep them busy for for about half an hour to 45 minutes definitely. So when we're looking at all of these, now these are the kind of exercises that you can start off very young. It's irrespective of breed, it's irrespective. You just need to be able to figure out what is it that my dog enjoys the most, and how is it that I can actually convert it into a game. Like we said, hide and seek. If my dog is going to come looking for me, then I'm the one who's hiding and my dog comes looking for me. If my dog works largely on treats, then I'm going to hide treats for him, and I need him to go looking for it. And then you can actually look at complexity levels, that you can hide it in a potted plant, you can hide it behind the sofa, stuff that's movable, stuff that he's not going to break very easily, and then he can actually move on. Now, when we look at exercise for senior dogs, again, senior dogs, when we look, yes, we are looking at a couple of medical problems also alongside. So which means that we are going to have to then take necessarily the advice of a vet to be able to figure out what is it that I can do. Sometimes long walks are not possible. Climbing up and climbing down becomes difficult, which means then I probably am restricted to a certain space. And this is the time where the mind stimulation games actually work largely. Now, coming down to the next point is the expenditure. What is it that we are looking at each stage? I did cover some time back in terms of what the large food expenditures that we are looking at. We are looking at veterinary, we are looking at food, we are looking at treats and toys, we are looking at grooming tools is what we are looking at, and then the other one being veterinary visits. Now, a largely healthy dog slash puppy, you probably need to visit the vet once in 3 to 4 months, just for a general checkup to make sure that the dog is fine, the skin coats are fine. Sometimes things tend to go a little unnoticed in the initial stages as a pet parent. But they can be picked up by the vet in the early stages, which means you're basically trying to address the problem right at the beginning instead of it getting into a chronic problem. So anywhere between 3 to 4 months is what we're looking for a veterinary visit. The initial 4 months where the vaccinations are on the higher side, primarily because you're giving booster shots as well so that the immunity ups post which. So we're looking at largely 3 vaccinations, which also go into booster shots. And then these 3 vaccinations become annual vaccinations going forward. So that's something that you team up with your regular vet visits. Then we are looking at food, like we say, as a combination of home cooked or store bought food. We are looking at somewhere between 80 to 100 rupees a day, looking at a medium sized breed, about 50 to 70 rupees a day if you're looking at a small sized breed. And we are also looking, I mean, there's also treats and stuff involved in it, store-bought treats, which, I mean, again, like we said, there's plenty available in the market in terms of taste, shape, sizes, color, everything. But of course, what we're largely looking at is what is it that my dog really likes. At a senior stage, when we are looking at it, you might need to change the food patterns around a little bit, depending upon the kind of exercise my dog gets, because that is one of the very large reasons why I'm going to look at changing my diet. A young dog, a puppy, a young adult is very high on protein-rich food because there is that kind of activity that you're giving your dog. But as the dog goes older, you're probably going to have to look at cutting down the proteins and the fats also because they're not getting that kind of exercise. So which means that you do need to, again, consult a nutritionist, which of course there are plenty now in Pune, along with your veterinary to be able to figure out what would be the best diet. But again, even from an older dog, a senior dog, we are looking largely between 80 to 120 rupees a day as a combination. With any of the premium food brands, you're probably looking at something about 120 to 140 rupees a day is what we are looking at. Now, these are from the like I said, the expenditure point of view. Now let's come down to some of the common reasons why people are a little, or they give it a second thought in terms of, should I really be getting this, or should I really be getting a dog at home? A couple of things that you need to be completely aware of. Now, these are all things which pass with time. They can be dealt with absolute correct training with a professional involved, and there is nothing that can't be tackled. Yeah, it's sometimes you need to have patience. You just need to have a little time on hand to be able to work, because here you're talking to an animal who is trying to talk to you. It's just how quickly and how well do I understand his language to be able to actually do it. So I personally do believe that dogs talk. It's just that you need to be able to understand, and they're talking through their body language, they're talking through the health conditions, they're talking through by their tail wags, they're talking through their eyes constantly, and they are telling you what they need at what point in time. Coming down to the common problems that we are looking at, one is of course the toilet training. Now that's a very large topic which a lot of families get exasperated about, because the dog is just not learning to pee and poop, or there are accidents that are still happening. My only answer to housebreaking is fix up a routine. Yeah, dogs thrive on routine. They love having a schedule. They work much better actually when they have a schedule. No, I mean, of course, you can always give it a break on one odd day, and when you know your training is on point. But the more schedule you have, if you actually make a chart and leave it on your fridge for the first 2 months of your dog growing up, believe you me, within the first week itself, you will find out what your dog's pattern is, and you will be able to put a time to it. Now, in the initial stages, while you're still training your dog, we basically try and put down a foot by saying, try and not change this routine for a while. Let him first get used to it, and then you can always play around with it. Um, Once he knows which spot he's going to pee on, once he knows what spot he needs to poop on, once he knows which surface he needs to go on, once he knows he's not supposed to put his teeth onto something, he will eventually, because like I said, they're creatures of habit, so they will eventually get it. It's just that I have to be very patient. As a pet parent, I have to be very strict about the routine that I follow. And when I'm saying I need my full family to go in line with me. So if I'm the primary caretaker, then I need my full family to basically follow the same routine for my pet that I'm putting it down for him. So it's not something that's unmanageable. Like I said, put in a routine, make a timetable. Uh, it might go little 20-25 minutes up and down on a day-to-day basis, but you will eventually come down to a range of time saying, okay, fine, between 10 and 10:30 my dog does poo. Yeah, that's when I need to then start taking him out. So that's how we basically go by it. The second very large problem is everybody wants a puppy, but what they don't want is the puppy biting. Now, what happens alongside is now the puppy teeth are actually, the milk teeth which are there, those are actually far more sharper than the permanent teeth that the dogs get. Permanent teeth typically come somewhere between 4.5 to 5 months is what we are looking at, where the milk teeth fall and the permanent teeth start coming in, and they're actually not that sharp. Now, why is it that a puppy bites? Just the way you and I have teething issues when we were infants, and probably all of us have cried at some point in time whenever we have teething issues, and we've heard this from our parents at any given point in time that she had a lot of problems, and there was fever running high and all of that, and at some point in time somebody said this is probably teething, and then suddenly it's like, there's a certain calm over the storm, because now at least you know why the child is crying. Now, this dog who's in your house now as a puppy, he basically, again, he needs gum stimulation, because that's what he basically needs whenever he starts kind of constantly nipping or chewing onto something or biting onto something. And what largely works for them is anything which will give their gums a certain play. Every time I bite onto something, I need to be able to have pressure on my gums, which is basically the soothing action for them. And then largely the top things that come to their mind is my hand, because every time I bite, my skin compresses. It gives them that kind of it gives the puppy that kind of gum pressure, and he starts actually feeling better. Now, if I, again, because it's hurting me at one point in time, it's much more easier to say no as an adult. But with children, what happens most often than not is you just the child ends up screaming, the dog gets more excited because of the screaming, and it starts doing it a lot more. So whenever a puppy starts biting, our first, again, training protocol is to be able to say a firm no. The no has to be constant across the family. Everybody's no needs to sound similar. It can't be, no beta, you can't do this to me right now, because that's just not going to work. The no beta, no sweetheart, no, you can't do this to me darling, no, that doesn't work. You have to be strict. You have to be able to communicate to your dog that this is hurting me and this is something that I'm not going to allow you. So that's your first level protocol that you follow. This phase typically lasts for about a month and a half, unless you and I allow it to continue beyond that. But again, with a strict training protocol, it's not something that you can't manage. There are a lot of chew toys that you get today in the market, which you can actually get your dog used to it, which basically means that they do leave your extremities, what we call our fingers, our toes, our hands, and you basically introduce them to the chew toy at that point in time. The third one being separation anxiety, which we are largely going through at this point in time, because all of us have been homebound. We've been told no to be stepping out. And now with the unlock phase The dog is like, what happened to all of them? They were home till yesterday. Everybody was home till yesterday. And then suddenly today, mom is out for about 3 hours and she says she's going to be back later. Dad has been gone for about an hour or two. And the children suddenly are going down to play with their friends. And where exactly does that leave me? So separation anxiety is also something that we need to start right from day one. Getting the dog used to being by himself is something that is a very healthy choice that you need to make for your pet, because please remember that you guys are not going to be around unless you can manage to be around your dog 24/7, and you can manage to be around for every smallest of thing that the dog asks you for it, as against saying, no, I can't do this with you right now, I'm going to do this with you about 20 minutes later. Once I'm done with this call, I'm going to come down and I'm going to play with you. So it is a healthy habit. Again, just the way I do a lot of human animal comparison over here. Just the way we got used to school, just the way we got used to as children, we got used to living by ourselves when our parents went out for a dinner. I was just telling this to somebody yesterday that so whenever my parents went out for dinner, because they used to be a part of a club which used to have a dinner every month, one particular Monday. So at that point in time, me and my sister would actually get like a pizza dinner. So that was reward in itself. So work again on the same principle. When you want your dog to be being by himself, there are a couple of things that you need to put in mind, making sure that he's sufficiently exercised, he's been fed, he's been walked, he's been pooped. Now, having said all the basic requirements are taken care of, here is your favorite toy. Sit on it, chew on it, play with it, do whatever you want with it, but I'm not going to be available for you for about starting off with this activity. I mean, the separation activity starts largely from a 1 minute distance, and then it can go down to as good as about 3 to 4 hours. There are dogs even today who can live at home alone for a 5 to 6 hour gap without any interaction from the human, if sufficiently exercised, played, and all his basic necessities are met. There's water available, there is a place where he can pee and poop while he's inside the house, and then he can actually stay over there. So these are the kind of things that, like we said, are largely the ones that we look at when, in terms of should I really be getting a dog home. That leaves me to one of the last questions that Monica's posted across to me is, what kind of pets should family with younger kids prefer? Anybody. I mean, we are really not looking at, I largely will say that any dog is trainable according to what your requirement is. Yes, some dogs are bigger in strength, some dogs are larger, some dogs are smaller. But when you push a dog into a corner and when you push a dog into a threatening space, every dog is going to come back very strongly. So it's not whether a lab is not going to come down strongly or whether a Rottweiler is not going to come down strongly. What we want you to understand is, find out what the breed requires. Find out what the breed requires in terms of exercise. Find out what the breed is good at. Find out why the breed was initially bred for. Have they worked alongside humans? Have they worked away from humans? Like, for example, territory guarding dogs have always worked away from humans. They were left in a perimeter, in a guarded area, to guard the fence, which means that they've never really operated from the confines of a home. They've worked on the outside. So find out whether it's a German Shepherd, a Doberman, a Lab, a Golden Retriever, Cocker Spaniels, Pugs, Beagles, anybody that you're looking at, irrespective of breed, even an Indie. With Indies, one thing I would largely say is, whenever you're looking at picking up an Indie, try and see if there is, try and establish a history. Try and see if you can actually work with a behaviorist or the trainer before you're actually even going and picking up your puppy, so that the trainer and the behaviorist who's basically coming in as a professional will give you a sense of what is it that you need to look for in the puppy in the initial stages at the time of adoption itself, to be able to find out whether this dog is going to be suitable for my needs or not. So there are sometimes, I mean, dogs have been picked up of streets for which there is no history, but sometimes dogs have been fostered for a long enough time for even the foster family to be able to have a certain behavior pattern about the dog, more than what the dog eats and doesn't eat. I want to know, how does the dog behave around children? How does the dog behave if I have a person on a wheelchair in the house? How does this dog behave if there is a thunderstorm? Has this dog been through a Diwali period where there have been crackers? Does he get petrified? These are the kind of questions. If I have younger children, does this dog do okay with chaos around? Because at some point in time, you're going to have a birthday party at home, and there are going to be 10, 15 children playing, running in the house. In fact, I've even heard this from families which are boy-centric as against girl-centric, where boy games are very different and girl games are very different. So you do need to take a call. Like girls, I mean, I've had a girl who came in to me for a pre-pet counsel, and she said, I want a dog whose hair I can, like, tie up. I want to do bows for my dog. In which case, there is a certain understanding that you're looking at. You will look at, like, a long-coated dog, like like a Shih Tzu or a Havanese or a Lhasa Apso for that matter, and then we will work with the dog so that he also enjoys that particular activity, as long as it's not hurting him. So everything is possible, is probably what I want to say to you. It's just that what we want you to avoid is, don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, fine, let's go get a dog today. Yeah, go do your research, look up, find out. There are a lot of people available out there now, online as well as through physical meetings, so you can go try and get a little bit of an understanding. If you as parents have had dogs growing up, yes, it does make a difference, because there is a certain sense already that you have. Because I've heard this, I personally don't sense it, but a dog household also smells different, is what I hear. I somehow, I've always had dogs, so I don't know how different it smells, but then yes, that is what a non-dog owner will come. So it is a lot of balance, it is a lot of combination, it is a lot of coordination. It is a 15-year dependency that we are looking at. And it is a matter of point where somebody or the other always needs to chip in whichever way possible, to be able to make sure that it's a healthy and contented life for the pet that we're actually bringing him home. Yes, I think I'm pretty much done with in terms of what we were supposed to cover. Monica, anything else that we're looking at largely? Yes, Sunil.
Thank you so much, Shalaka ma'am. I think that was a great info. Now I think we should open it up for question and answers. Any potential pet parents who plan to adopt any pets, I'm sorry, dogs, are free to unmute themselves and ask questions. Yeah, hi, Sushant. I think you have a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Sushant here. So I'm planning to adopt a dog, but I have so many doubts in the schedule.
Okay.
Making a schedule, a proper schedule.
Okay.
So
you want to know how to make a schedule?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, you make your schedule. Yeah. In terms of how does my day go? Let's say, for example, I wake up at 6 and I sleep at 11 in the night. And how is it largely that my day goes? I'm looking at a working day, and I'm looking at a holiday, or I'm looking at, if you're in school or college, I'm looking at what my school day looks like and what my holiday looks like. So once you've set your routine, then try and see what are the points in that routine where you'll be able to squeeze in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour. Where is it that you'll actually be able to compromise? Where is it that you'll be able to actually put in, okay, fine. If largely, if we say first meal is if you have to kind of largely look at a dog schedule on a normal day, you're looking at first meal between 8:30. You're looking at the first walk at 7 o'clock. Then you're looking at a meal at 8:30. Then you're looking at another second meal at 12:30. Third meal, I'm still looking at a puppy. Third meal at about 4:30, and then the last meal at about 8:30. Now, always also remember that the dog largely goes on your schedule. If the house wakes up at 5 in the morning, the dog will also wake up at 5 in the morning. If the house sleeps at 8:30 in the night, the dog is also going to sleep at 8:30 in the night. So, because he's just another person in the pack at this point in time. So, if there is no activity happening around, and if there is nothing going to be happening around a particular point in time, then your dog is also going to largely go by your time. Like today, like now, I go to the gym, not anymore, but I go for a walk at 5 o'clock and 5:30 in the morning. My dog wakes up with me. He looks at me and he actually doesn't follow me because he like, this is not the time that she gives me at all. But once I come back home at about whatever 7:30 is when I typically enter home back. At that point in time, there are no two ways about it. Like I have to be able to sit with them for those 15 minutes before I get back into my routine and I say, okay, fine, it's food time. So you first decide what your routine is. If there is, I mean, with other people in the family, what their routines are and where is it that you'll be able to fit in. Everything is changeable. Like we get a lot of people who work off shifts, who are in IT or even the medical field at this point in time, where somebody comes back at 3 in the morning. Yeah. And this dog gets walked at 3 in the morning because that's when the owner comes back home. He's awake for another hour because he doesn't want to wake up again at 6:30 in the morning. So it's not that it's not possible. It's just that what is it that you can follow for a fairly large period of time, as in a week, and you yourselves will be able to, as mentioned, fit in the dog at any given point. Unless you say that you leave home at 8 in the morning and you come back home at 8 in the night, then you're probably going to look at getting a much older dog who needs a home. Anushri will be able to help you with something along those lines, and who's okay to actually being at home. So maybe there's a friend who could pitch in for you, or there's a family member who could pitch in for you, just to, like, somewhere in the middle come and make sure that the water bowls are refilled. From a product point of view, there are automatic water dispensers, there are automatic food dispensers that you get. You can install CCTV cameras inside the house to be able to make sure that your pet is actually staying out of trouble largely. And of course, you need to make sure that there's a place for him to pee and poop, especially if he's going to be away for longer hours, so that his needs are met. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Digvijay Bhandari.
Yes,
good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, regarding my question, I was looking out for videos on dog training and things like that.
Okay.
So there are many different approaches that they show across. So like, there is one thing that I'm really confused about is, does the puppy require a crate?
Does the puppy require a crate? Puppy requires any dog, just the way I want my room at the end of the day. Every dog also wants his space at the end of the day. Now, whether you define it as a crate or whether you define it as a small corner in the house, that's really up to you. Why you will see a lot of trainers go with the crate option is because it's a safer option. It just largely keeps your dog out of trouble, especially when your dog is going to be left unsupervised. So, and there are going to be points in time in the day where your dog is going to be left unsupervised. And then what happens is, with a very clear understanding of this crate being a positive association, like this is a space I call my own, and this is the space that I can go in and rest it out with nobody disturbing me also at that point in time. It actually then becomes a safe space. So which is why you do see a lot of, I mean, I personally do recommend crate training largely. As we mentioned, if not a crate training, a lot of families, what they do is you get those removable fencing, which you can actually install in the house, the DIY kind of a thing. So even that's something that actually works sometimes. It could be one of those removable baby doors that you get, that you put in, so that largely your pet stays in one room, because it's also easier to then monitor what the dog is doing. And this is irrespective of, I mean, starting from puppy, yes, you do need to start it off, and it becomes a much more easier habit to take up forward as the dog becomes older. We are looking at situations, let's say there's work happening. I mean, like, there's let's say you're doing some civil work in your house and you need this dog to actually be away, because you don't want him meddling around these people. You don't want him to be picking up things off, like, or just generally barking, because he's very wary of strangers being inside the house. That's when you can actually use this go to create command or go to place command. And then your dog is like, okay, fine, what's happening outside is taken care of. I'm expected to be out of the situation at this point in time. And then that's how it largely works from the dog's point of view. My dogs, for example, are also being used to being tied up for a little while, like actual leash tethering. Now, when they were both growing up, I have given them some of the best treats, which they don't get otherwise on a day-to-day basis when they were leashed up and they were let out. Of course, this is again after all exercise, food, everything is done. So that today, even if I just put the leash onto my dog and I just loop it around the chair without even tying it, my dog thinks he's tied up and he doesn't move unless and until I've given him a release command. So that's the level of training also that can be achieved. And therefore, which is why we say that any form of confinement, as long as it's been taught in a very positive manner, it works wonders for the dog. Look at all those practical problems. Like we said, my dog is unwell, I need him to be in one place. My dog has a ligament injury, I need him to be like, I need him to be confined to a certain space because I cannot have him running around because it's just going to keep getting worse. So these are all the practical situations that we look at, and which is why we say that any form of confinement, if taught in the right manner, actually does wonders when it comes to that, and throughout the life stages, right from puppyhood to senior ages.
Right, ma'am. So basically, it is right to positively teach them crates
Yes.
and leashes and collars at a
Absolutely,
younger age.
at a much younger age, because it just, like I said, it just becomes then it's what we call the word desensitization. So everything is basically you're making the dog used to it. You don't know when is it that you're going to have to use it, but it's something that my dog is used to it. It's just the way I'll do a car travel with my dog, for example.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
Right, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Hina.
Hi,
So
Hina.
I don't know whether this is relevant or no. So this is about when we give puppies for adoption.
Okay.
So what all important question we should just keep in our mind, like what all points ki, like sometimes it happens कि अरे घर छोटा है but the family is good.
Yeah.
So like what all points we should consider.
What you're basically looking at is look at what kind of time commitment are they willing to give, what kind of any previous experience with pets, that always helps. How old are the children, meeting with the full family. I mean, what we largely do, as we say, as a pre-pet consult. I don't do a pre-pet consult with one or two people in the family. I do it with the entire family, if they're grandparents all the way down to much younger children who probably don't understand what I'm talking. I mean, anybody less than 5 years, for them it's just one lady who's kind of constantly talking and she's not getting the dogs out. But it gives me a sense of that child. How fidgety is he? Is he moving around too much? Is he actually listening to his parents? If I give him an instruction, is he actually listening to that instruction? Because you just then know how is it that you are going to cater to, or how is it that you are going to manipulate your talk while you're talking to the parents to be able to take up this child, like, this is what. Because at that point in time, I'm also going to tell them that if this child is going to be around, and the fact that yes, he's largely dependent on the mother till the time school begins and everything, and the child is going to be out of the house for about 3 to 4 hours, please remember that play needs to be supervised, because anybody can get hurt in the process, because that's the only way. A lot comes down when you actually, and which is why we try and do face-to-face meetings more than phone meetings, because expressions give out a lot. Like sometimes you end up saying something and the family just knows that, oh my god, this is definitely not possible. Their expressions give it out. And you do actually, and that's the trigger point for you. So you do need to make sure that, okay, fine, I need to say this again to the family, like, maybe that's the point. I'll say that, okay, fine, maybe you should try adopting an older dog instead of a puppy, or maybe wait for a year because your hands are already full with XYZ and you want to maybe, like, wait up. So these are the kind of things, other than of course the ones that I listed out, like, you do need to give them a sense of exercise, grooming requirements, how do I need to bathe my dog, giving them facilities of these are the places that you can go and get your dog groomed, because there are now a lot of facilities available for that, so that it becomes a service orientation kind of a thing, and that's how you move about it with it further. But try and meet up with the full family, even if it takes a lot of coordination for you to be able to do that, but try and meet up with the full family. I think it gives you a lot about the dynamics.
Right. So we
Yeah.
should not like consider the place, like how big the house is, or like my point was that. So
My personal, I think I have a fabulous example over here. I used to have this client about 8 years back. They eventually moved to Canada. Two young boys, a family of two, a very like a 2 bedroom standard house, and the boys wanted a Great Dane, and they were bloody hell sure that they wanted a Great Dane, and they were willing to do anything and everything that it required for them to have a Great Dane. So much so that there used to be water cuts at that point in time in their area. These boys would, and like, because it's a big dog, the society people would complain if you're using up too much water, because at the end of the day, you have to bathe the Great Dane every
Great Dane.
15 days. But these boys made sure that this dog was exercised outside properly. One of them would work for 2 hours in some shop just so that he could earn extra money, so that he could give better food to the dog, because his parents had said that that's what we need to do, because we can't afford a Great Dane. I mean, that's also something that you need to look at. And then the third thing was, they would, I mean, from the water cut point, they would actually collect one bucket of water every day from what was allowed and fill up a large tub, and every 15 days they would bathe her with that water, so that there's no water which was going wasted. I think that's commitment. If you're willing to
Right.
do that, I think then the size of the house becomes immaterial. We know a lot
Doesn't
of
matter.
families where, like, let's say the dog is moved from is in a foster home, and it's a large foster home, and he's then moved to a smaller house, and it's like, will the dog adjust? Believe you me, the dog adjusts. Just make sure that all his, whatever his physical and mental and food needs are, as long as they are being met, I think any family is as good a family. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, this is Vijay here.
Hi, Vijay.
Basically, nowadays we have this different flooring which are smooth in
Yes.
the apartments and all.
Yeah.
So either when you get a puppy and as he, he's growing up, they kind of, do a running around and all that. But does
Yeah.
that impact, their kind of the
Yeah.
shape of their legs? Sometimes it might, because the bones are very soft, right? So these are a smooth floor, so they can't quickly
Yes.
stop there.
Yeah. So we do recommend no active playing inside the house. These are standard your vitrified tiles that we are looking at. So we say try and not do any kind of active running where I'm running and the dog is running behind me, because what actually hampers is not the running, it's the skid at the end of the running is basically what hampers
Right.
them, because that's when it largely comes on the hip joint. If you're talking about medium sized breeds, that's where it largely affects them. So we try and see, there are today if you have a dog that's coming in, and you just generally, you can actually get the dog used to dog socks. There are socks that you can put the dog onto right from literally 2 months of age, as soon as the dog comes into your house, and that's something that he gets used to eventually. They do look a little funny initially, let me admit that, when they start walking, because it's like, they're clumping alongside, because it's just very weird for them. But they do get used to it. So that's one option that you have. If there is any which way that you can install, like, a removable carpet or something like that, that's something that works as an option. The other thing that we always say is, you can allow sometimes the dog to jump up on something. It's the jumping down something. It's like a sofa or a bed or a chair or anything. Is the jumping down needs to be controlled, because that again is sometimes a very fast activity, and with a wrong footing or a wrong landing, it can actually affect their joints as well. So jumping down is something that we try and get the family to be very categorically careful about. And all kinds of play largely need to happen either in the parking lot, in the terrace, because a lot of parking lots now do have the interlocking tiles which are anti-skid, or there's cement surfacing. Shahbad flooring is what we are largely looking at from a play point of view. But yes, from you do need to be careful with any kind of if there are children in the family, yeah, children and dogs are not allowed to run together in the house.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Avantika,
Hi,
and
Avantika.
I want to ask that I come back from school in 3 o'clock, and my
Okay.
parents go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So should I keep a dog?
How old are you, Avantika?
I am 9 years old.
You're 9 years old, and like I said, we started off with. So, what is it that you are willing to do for the dog? Is what I and your parents want to know.
Work
Okay. And
and give food
okay.
and look after him.
Look after him. And how much time is there nobody in the house? Like, say, what time once your parents leave and you leave, and for how long? What period is there nobody in the house? 2 hours, 3 hours?
My grandmother is there.
Then you need to ask your grandmother whether she's okay with getting a dog, because she's the one who's going to be looking. So your job then is to make sure that you train your dog well,
Okay.
so that she or he doesn't trouble your grandmother so much, and
Okay.
doesn't jump up on your grandmother, because you don't want any kind of an injury to happen to your
Yeah.
grandmother, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you can come over one of the days to just play around with some of my dogs,
Yeah.
and then we could maybe another year down the line, maybe we could think of getting a dog.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Avantika. I think Advait has a question. Advait, I see you raised your hand.
I think there are a couple of more in the chat also. So yeah.
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 I would like to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
May I know why you said that kids and dogs are not allowed to run together? Because I generally see kids and dogs a lot.
No, I just said kids and dogs are not allowed to run together inside the house environment when a puppy is growing up. That's because it tends to, I mean, it just tends to be very fast, and as we mentioned, it's primarily from the joint patterns of the dog. Like I think Mr. Vijay said that the bones are bones are very soft, which means there's a very high chance of injury. Which is why we say we're not allowed to do. It's like, rampant running. It's like, like, if it's a controlled activity, it's much more easier to work on. Yeah. But when it's like everybody's in a high end frenzy, sometimes the injury does tend to happen without us understanding that the injury has happened, and it might not actually even show immediately. It's something that can reflect even about 2 to 3 months later. As the dog grows, it can actually reflect even then, which is where we're saying in the house, when we say that I mean, everybody gets zoomies. I think children also get zoomies and dogs also get zoomies, where you're just randomly running and there's no control over the activity. So that's the one that we are trying to put under control with a little bit of supervision. But it's not, I mean, yeah, dogs and kids, I think one make a fabulous pair. I mean, that's where our whole attempt of doing a lot of programs that we do with children basically work on, so that they become the primary caregiver depending upon their age. And it's a fabulous exercise, bond building, compassion driven, all of that. But it's inside the house when we say that, like, in a slipping surface is where we are trying to avoid the dogs and kids to dogs basically to run alongside.
So just in case, if we allow the children and dog to run outside, or just like say in an open ground, then
Absolutely fine, as long as your dog comes under a command. Because I'm okay. See, now what happens again is, my child, my dog, absolutely fine. They get along well. My child is not scared of my dog suddenly jumping up on him and all of that, if at all that's allowed. But what I also need to then put into place is, because as a disclaimer, is that I cannot allow my dog to do it with random strangers.
Okay.
Yeah, so I need to have that command. Like, I need to be very sure of the fact that if because why is it that most people are, like, scared of dogs? You're walking in the society, your dog is doing his own thing. Imagine your dog suddenly going running towards somebody, and that person is scared. Now I have to respect that person's fear as well, and I have to stop my dog while he is running to be able to come back to me.
So that means we got to train the dog first to make sure that.
Yes, because if my dog is doing any kind of an off leash activity, My dog has to have a stop when told to stop command and 100% recall, because you don't know, one, there could be another dog who comes samne se, there could be another child who comes samne se, there could be a physically disabled person who's maybe walking in the same area and they don't want, like, then they just get scared and therefore they get fluttered. Your dog actually might not even go and do anything to them, but the point is, it's an open space, it's a public space, and therefore I need to be in 100% control of my dog at that point in time. Only then am I actually allowed to let go of my dog off leash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm Rugved.
Hi, Rugved.
Ma'am, I was having a question, ma'am. My friends and I have made a dog donation in which we all help to get donation from people and feed them food, ma'am. I was having question that which food we should give and how we can handle dogs.
How you can handle? So are you looking at street dogs? You feed street dogs?
Yes.
Like the dogs in your area?
Yes, ma'am.
I think everybody just needs to clap for this boy. I think how old are you, Rugved?
10.
10. Wonderful. I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to get Anushri, the lady from Pawthorn who just spoke to you. I'm going to tell her personally to give you a call or send you a message after this is over. And what you can basically chat with her on about, because they have a lot of volunteers who work across the city. Yeah. So depending upon which area you're working on, she'll probably be also able to help you maybe get the right kind of food in terms of what food brands you can pick up. Like we said, there is lots available in the market, so depending upon how much money you've raised, based on that you can decide how many dogs you're going to be feeding. But also please remember that if these dogs, part of the reason I'm saying is if you can also get these dogs vaccinated, because that also keeps you safe and your friends who are feeding these dogs safe, so that no dog, from a dog bite point of view. And what you also need to remember, that if there is any dog who's particularly scared of approaching you every time you're going to give them the food, don't force an interaction. And by that I mean, don't try and be friends with this particular dog, because maybe he has a bad experience somewhere previously, which is why he's keeping humans away from him, and you don't want to put yourselves in a situation where he feels very threatened. So just make sure that you are taking care of yourselves, you and your friends are taking care of yourselves when you're feeding. And like I said, I will probably get Anushri from Pawthorn, and if there's any which way that we can actually do a vaccination drive for you, we would love to do it for you guys.
Yes, also you can deworm the pups. That would be good.
Yeah, so Anushri ma'am just told you that you can also look at deworming. So maybe you can get in touch with me or Anushri after this session is over, and we'll see what's the best way that we can actually work it out for you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, and all the best.
And kudos, Advait, for taking care of the pups.
Seriously,
yeah,
at 10?
Amazing. Yeah. We need more such, people and kids who are taking care of strays and all. Very good. Nice job.
Anushri, maybe I'll pass you Rugved's number, and if you could just talk to him after the session, that would be
yes.
booster.
Yes.
Yeah. So Shalaka ma'am, I'm not sure if we still have a couple of questions. Would you like to answer them now, or?
I'm just going through the chat. There is Rugved, I think I just answered. Thank you, Jitendra. I'm glad you enjoyed the session. Can you share information about puppy proofing the house, especially in an apartment with plants? Most difficult job. It is recommended to have everything ready before considering adoption. This is Atreya SN. Yes. So yes, it is necessary and it is recommended to have everything ready before considering adoption. From a puppy proofing point, we are largely looking at loose wires. We are looking at the habits of people in the house who have habits of throwing things around the house, which automatically gets corrected because the dog ends up picking up stuff behind you. Loose wires, any low seating, any glassware that you have in and around the house, depending upon the size of the dog, because some of the dogs, their tails can be very strong. Like, they're just generally wagging, and things tend to, like, get knocked off of the side tables or the center tables and stuff like that. So if you have any glass vases or anything like that, or any, like, small ornamental things, you might want to look at picking that up initially. Shoes, socks need to go in the rightful place. That's a habit that I think a lot of mothers come back to me saying that our kids have finally started doing that. From a plant's point of view, what we are largely looking at is if you're using pesticides, if you're using any kind of fertilizer, even if it's an organic fertilizer or a chemical fertilizer, you might need to do away with that. Organic fertilizers are still good, but yes, there still needs to be a categorical sectioning out or a categorical supervision when your dog is left out in, say, the balcony. If there is any which way that you can raise the plants for a couple of days is, sorry, an understatement, maybe a couple of weeks, that would definitely help. But yes, do prepare your mind for the fact that some leaves are going to be torn off at some point in time while your puppy is growing up. So we're just basically largely, because what happens is, if the fertilizer is something, especially if it's an organic fertilizer, some dogs even tend to eat it. So you probably do need to check with your vet once in terms of whether you need to be a little more diligent with the deworming schedules as against what is otherwise routinized for a dog. So that's what I would say actually from a pet's point, from a plant. You will also get a list of plants that is available on the internet in terms of what's allowed and what's not allowed. So maybe if you have any of the ones that are not allowed from a dog's point of view, you might need to, like, keep them in a restricted area for a little, till the time the pup grows out of the puppy stage. Yeah, so I hope I've answered your question, Atreya. Anything else, Advait?
We have a couple from Sophie. She wants to know about separation anxiety. Some tips, how she can teach her dog to be alone.
Yeah, so there is a full-blown program, Sophie, that we work actually on separation anxiety, depending upon at what stage is your dog. Like, is it just whining, howling? Is it whining, howling, crying? Whining, howling, crying, barking, whining, howling, crying, destruction. So I will be able to probably take this up one-on-one, but we do have preset programs that I'll be able to run you through, whether you're looking at for your own pup or you're looking at giving it out further up. So if you can connect individually, I should be able to do that. So if there's anything specific, we do have ready programs available for, like, the most basic behavior problems, and I should be able to just email them across to you if you get in touch with us, get in touch with me individually. Yeah. Anything else, Sophie? I think there's how to take care of a puppy in the period. Let me just quickly look at this. Male dog or female dog? That's something that we actually didn't touch up upon. Both dogs are as loving. Both sexes are as loving. Both sexes are as compassionate. Females typically come in heat, what we call their periods. On an average, we look at about every 6 to 9 months, largely. So they come into the heat period every 6 to 9 months. It is about a 15-day period. I won't go into the technicalities of it, but the first 10 to 11 days is when they're typically bleeding. They self-groom themselves. They keep themselves largely clean. So if you have a dog who's up and about on the sofa, up and about on your beds, you might want to look at covering it with another layer just so that there is no staining. You need to make sure that your dog is not, in the first 10 to 11 days, your female dog is not even going to get, the most larger varieties, that's when they actually can get pregnant. So your first 10 to 12 days is where your dog is not going to even allow a male dog to come close to you, close to her. After that is always, in the wild, please remember, it's always the female's prerogative in terms of who she allows to come close to her. It's a wild animal at the end of the day, and that gene pool continues. So after the 13th day, when the bleeding stops and there's a whitish discharge, is when she's actually ready for mating. That's when you just need to make sure that your dog is necessarily walking on leash while she's walking outside with you. Male dogs in and around your area will probably go off food, which is again very natural for a male dog to happen. Male dogs do not come on heat. It's only the female dog who comes on heat. And yeah, and so that's something that you need to be able to remember and to be able to put it across. So male dog also, if there's anybody in and around, you just need to make sure that you need to tell your neighbors or anybody to make sure that the dog is necessarily on leash at that point in time. Other than that, there is no extra care that needs to be taken other than the, I mean, like, you know, you probably just need to, why every time your dog gets up, every time your female dog gets up after a X number of time, she's probably left a smear of blood on the floor. You just need to clean it out with a disinfectant wipe. That's about it. No other special care needs to be taken. Yeah, I think the questions are also mostly answered. Yeah, from the chat window.
Yes, I guess all of them are answered now.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Shalaka ma'am. It was a great session.
Thank you so much, Sunil. Thank you.
And you know, well, I loved some of the examples that you gave, especially one, you know, where you said that when it comes, if you kind of willing to give that kind of commitment, everything else becomes immaterial. So
yes,
that was a great example. Folks, if you're planning to get a pet home, if you're planning to get a dog home, especially, do feel free to reach out to Shalaka ma'am. You know, if you need her information, contact information, we can provide that to you. She has some great outstanding programs which she runs, and you know, she should be able to answer all your questions. Also, if you're planning to adopt a pup or you know, a dog, indie dog, please get in touch with Pothon or get in touch with us, Etian, and we should be able to help you do that. Okay, I hope you found this session informative, and I hope you kind of keep coming back to Etian for many such sessions. I would like to thank our associate partners, Pothon, Run for a Cause, Pet Sitters, People for Animals, Pune Canine Kitchen, Animal Rescue Trust, and Crazy Paws. Thank you so much. Let me come to the part where we talk about our upcoming sessions. We have online yoga batches happening. Now we also planning to launch a music school. I mean, the music school is already launched. We planning to get more sessions added to that. We'll kind of keep you updated. If you're already in our follows list, we'll keep you updated about that. A very interesting session coming up tomorrow. We have Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai, author of this book called Corporate Chanakya. He's written like 17 books about Chanakya Niti. So, you know, if you feel you're interested, please feel free to tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. In our dog series, we're going to talk about healthcare and first aid for stray dogs. If you feel you're interested, do log in on 8th August 4 p.m. We're going to talk about animal welfare heroes, especially information about organizations who work for animal welfare, what kind of work they do, how we can approach them, that kind of stuff. That's happening on 9th August 4 p.m. We also going to have a session on importance of spaying and neutering for strays. We have Aleta from CCC who's going to talk about that. It's happening on 16th August 4 p.m. So that's about the upcoming sessions. If you need to reach us, feel free. Our email address is explore@etian.com. Our phone number is 9823510755. If you want to follow us on YouTube, Etian is what you can search for. And we also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you, Shalaka ma'am. Thank you, Pothon. You have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.